Our discussion is concerned with one of the four dominant approaches to the interpretation and critiquing of literature. This thing is very important that we are now studying uh, critiquing, evaluating, interpreting, uh, and criticizing literature. This is what we are doing now. Like we are trying to learn the skills of interpreting literature, how any literature produced in the form of drama, in the form of poem, in the form of a novel or a short fiction, and even in the form of critical essays, we are going to interpret, to learn the skills of interpreting them. And in this, we are discussing one dominant approach, which is specifically dominant in this contemporary world from 1930s onward until today, that is text-oriented approach. And specifically, as I have referred to Michel Foucault and Roland Barthes, Claude Lévi-Strauss, they have developed their exact author concept that, author is not to be discussed in a literary work, whether that is a poem or that I'm repeating the thing, so I should avoid, better avoid. Uh, and this, the main concern of text-oriented approach is to interpret literature from various angles, not bringing in the biography and the context, historical, social context of the time of the production of the literary text. This is what we are concerned. But we have gone through, the first one was when we were talking from editorial point of view, that how we study literary text from this perspective, that language, vocabulary has been used from this perspective, that perspective, and how first edition was having these words and second edition was having these words. And in the first edition, those many new words, which were alien words, you may call them alien words, were introduced into the text. While the second, uh, the number of alien words was reduced, specifically when we are talking of Shakespeare. So until now, it is believed that Shakespeare has used the most vocabulary in the history of English literature. And even the number of adjectives and the number of adverbs and the number of action verbs and the number of stated being verbs. This is all concern of philology. Then we move to rhetoric and stylistic, where we are considering the efficacy of uh, the literary text rather than uh, these vocabulary or other things or editions that are supported a number of words or these things. Instead, we focus that how effective it is for the reader, how effective it is for the audience, judging from that point of view. So, stylistically and rhetorically, we judge any literary text from the point of view of a reader, in the sense that how much a reader is influenced, or audience, how much an audience is influenced. Then when we come to formalism and uh, structuralism, they are almost nearly the same thing, because structure and form, we have talked of this, that as we have in English language, the concept is coming from language. That is, in every sentence, in every English sentence, there is a subject, there is a verb, and there is an object. And sometimes there is, means this is the basic structure, and then we add next that adverbs are there, or verbs are there when we make a tree diagram of a sentence and we divide them into noun phrase and verb phrase and participle and so many other things. So the concept is coming from there, that as language has got a basic structure, similarly literature has got a specific structure and specific form. And it is, means whenever literature is being seen, it must be seen through the parameters of those structures and those forms. We have already talked of some of the forms. I should not repeat it. Then we have reached this point. I hope it is visible to you people on the screen. The principle of this procedure is based on myth criticism. You know about mythology. I have talked of it, that how in the beginning I told you that in order to understand this universe and the mechanism running in it, human beings attempted from their own mind to give interpretation to what is happening around them. And this resulted in Greek and before that Egyptian mythologies. And that's why we have in Egyptian mythologies as well as in Greek mythologies, we have thousands of gods. Oh, there is a god of rain, and there is a god of flowers, and there is a god of birds, and there is a god of irrigation, and there is a god of so many gods are there in any form. And these are the explanation. Like generally, we think that there must be a force behind everything. This is our belief. Like now, look at this. If I am talking to you, so I'm a force that I'm asking you to read this book. Might be you had not read this if I had not asked you. So I am that force. But behind me there is another force, and that force is salary that I'm getting paid for it. This is my job, my duty. And then there is another force that is this institution that is, so whenever we think that there is a force, there is a cause behind every action. And that's why if I eat something, so some other one is producing that thing, and when that some other one is absent, definitely out of my mind, I give some logical solution to it, and it resulted in myth. Myths were developed. There are too many myths. If we talk of it, one I just give an example. I might have talked of it as well. Uh, Pygmalion was a very great sculptor in ancient Greece. But he didn't like women. Sorry, with due apology for girls. So then he made a statue of ideal woman. And then he requested Aphrodite, the goddess, to give this statue life. Because he fell in love with her and then requested the goddess to know make it a living woman, and she was turned into a living woman. This is one type of mythology, that how we are having the most beautiful of the perfect form of woman. There is another, I'm referring to another, that is uh, Eris. Eris is, uh, she was beautiful, a goddess again in Greek mythology. And she is the goddess of greenery. She is the goddess of greenery. So what happened that she was, you know, uh, abducted by the underworld guard, and she was underworld. For this reason, greenery from this world was removed, because when she was underworld, there was no greenery on the surface of the earth. So winter and spring, these two seasons. Later on, a discussion is coming as well. But now it is in ancient Greeks. It was believed that because for 6 months this goddess of greenery is in the underworld with the god of underworld. So that's why it is winter and there is no greenery on the earth. And the next 6 months she is on the earth. That's why greenery is there. And there is another myth about the eco. And I can make my own myths as well if I try to. And you can also make your own myths. So myth criticism, which analogously tries to restrict thematic phenomena to formal structures, means that if you try, like as formalism and structuralism says that there is a plot and there are characters and there are settings and there's dialogues and point of view, this is both formalism and structuralism at the same time. And similarly, if we are treating with a poem, so we say that in this the poem there is a speaker, and he speaks something, and there is a setting. The setting is either a funeral or a wedding or festival or any other festival, or it's a family discussion or anything like that. That is the setting. And then there is, different things are discussed in that poem. So every poem will contain these things. No poem can be one which is out of this thing. That is formalism, and we talked of Cooper's reduction of characters into a few, like villain, donor, helper, princess, hero, and false hero. So myth criticism helped in this thing, and similar to Propp's character typology, types of character, myth criticism exposes patterns of myths. For example, the mother-son relationship and patricide. In myth of Oedipus, patricide means killing father. So I had told you this story in the myth of Oedipus. If you remember, I had told you this entire story, that how the king was told that you will have a son and he will kill you and he will marry his mother, and then the king asked his son to be killed across the mountain, and there he was saved, and when he was young he was returning back because of the confusion. You would remember that story. So as deep structures underlying a variety of texts. So when you try to look at this mother-son relationship and patricide, this myth of patricide and mother-son relationship, you will come to know that in many texts this thing is there. This thing is recurrent. But this is not the only thing. There are many other things as well. The most famous and influential of example of this approach is J.G. Fraser's voluminous work, The Golden Bough, which tries to reveal the common structures of myths in different historical periods and geographical areas. Like we have three dominant geographies and eras of myths. First comes Egyptian myths. The second comes Babylonian myths. The third comes uh, Greek myths. And the oldest are Hindu myths. But unfortunately, because India is not in Europe or near Europe, Greece is in Europe, and Egypt is nearly Europe. So that's why, and Babylon is also near Europe. So their things, they came to surface because they were nearing them. And Hindu myths, Indian myths, which are at least 5,000 years old, they are not considered because they are not nearing the white race. So I talked of geographies and areas, periods. Uh, Egyptian myths are there some 4,500 years back. And similarly, Babylonian myths are also dating some 4,000 years back, while Greek myths are dating some 3,000 years back, and these Hindu myths, they are dating. So, the geographies are different. Greece is in Europe, Egypt is in Africa, Babylon is in Africa, and India is in Asia. So you see that different geographies are there, and then the historical periods are also different. A continuation of Pope's characters typology and Fraser's myth analysis was carried out in the 1950s and 1960s by Claude Lévi-Strauss. I talked of him in structural anthropology, which also refers to basic mythological patterns in its description and analysis of culture, that how cultures have developed out of mythology. This is what he has talked of. The most influential contribution offered by the methodological approach to literary criticism, however, is the work of Nathro Fry. I refer to him time and again. And his is the best work until now, if one wants to understand literature in its totality, not in its individual fragments, rather in its totality. So Northrop Frye is who places structures of myth at the heart of what he considers the main literary genre. According to Fry, the forms of comedy, romance, tragedy, and irony. This is wonderful. Satire resemble the patterns of seasons. Spring, so spring is for romance, lovemaking, common. There's a tragedy. Tragedy is generally autumn or winter, in which there is destruction, and comedy is autumn, in which there is, after romance there is summer. Summer, that is in which we see that there is fullness in the sense that whether it is they are flowers or uh, vegetables or grains or anything. So in spring it emerges, while in summer it reaches its climax, and you have a fullness in that. And similarly, autumn starts the decline and winter is the destruction. So this way, romance, tragedy, comedy, and irony, they are connected with these things, respectively. In primordial myth belonging to primitive ages. So this was related to structuralism. Now we are moving a subpart in uh, structuralism and formalism, that is archetypal criticism. Archetype, first try to understand what is archetype. Archetype means that I don't know how to discuss this person because he is a very complex person. This Carl Gustav Jung, he was a German psychoanalyst who does psychoanalysis. He is called a psychoanalyst. The person who is interpreting dreams and who is able to get some meaning from the gestures and movements of any person. Like if I say I noticed in the class that one is ticking the ballpoint time and again. So it is an indication that there is some inner worry in the person, and that person is trying to give it an outlet with the help of taking the ballpoint. And so many other examples are there. So when we uh, go into the depth of searching such concerns, this becomes psychoanalysis. Like, uh, I should stop here and I should move to this thing that according to uh, Carl Gustav Jung, human psyche means mind, not brain. There is a difference in mind and brain. Brain is the physical entity, while mind is the abstract, something in which wisdom and knowledge and so many other things are there. So according to Carl Gustav Jung, human mind is composed of three parts, which he calls human psyche. Human psyche is composed of three distinct parts. Part number one is collective unconscious. Collective unconscious is that part of the psyche of every human being in which the stories, the struggles, the problems, the feelings, the emotions of all human beings are stored. And that's why people brought up in different environment, in different cultures, different religions, they see the same kind of dreams. This is because dreams are coming from collective unconscious, and collective unconscious is equal in all human beings across the world, whether they are living in the extreme east, or they are living in the center, or living in the extreme west, but their collective unconscious is the same. This is one. Then there is a personal unconscious, and that personal unconscious is that part of human psyche where only the person's experiences, specifically emotional experiences, they are stored. That part of psyche is called personal unconscious. And sometimes when the experiences are stored and the person is not aware of it, that time it is called shadow. This personal unconscious is then called shadow when the person is not aware of these things. And then the third, uh, which is the apparent one, that is ego. And there is a diagram if you search for Jung's psychoanalytical diagram. So you will see that the example of an iceberg will be there, and you will see that just the tip of the iceberg is above the water, and there is a mountain type thing below the water. So he compares it like this, that conscious human being is very little, and that is just the tip of the iceberg, while the biggest part of human being lies beneath in the water level, which is not easily explorable. So this, and then in the unconscious, there are many things. Specifically, he talks of 12 most common primordial images or archetypes in which in uh, boyhood, boyhood and girlhood, I mean teenager, they see themselves princes and queens. And then at young age, when they are youth, full youth, 25, 26, 30, they see themselves as superheroes or superhumans. And when they go to next stage, that is when they are 40 plus 50, then they see themselves as the wise man, the sage. And then Holy Mary and Jesus Christ, and so he considers Jesus Christ to be the completion of human being. There are too many things, but one very important thing is this concept that in the beginning, human being was a single being. There was no man and woman in it. And this is also a myth. So once it happened that this single being, who was both a man and woman at the same time, this disobeyed God Dionysus, and God Dionysus became angry, and he split them, this individual being into two. So one half turned to a woman and the other half turned to a man, and that's why there is a mutual attraction in order to regain themselves. So when a man and woman, they get married, they become one complete being. This is that myth. So here he says that enema and animus. He says that in the mind or in the psyche of every woman, there is the image of a man, and that image he calls animus. What is happening that whenever the image in the mind is reflected in another human being in the world, mean another man in the world, the image of the animus in the mind is reflected in a physical man in this world. So the woman is attracted toward that. And contrary to it, there is the image of enema in the psyche of every man, boy, man, whatever you may call him. So whenever it happens that the image in the mind, it is reflected in a physical woman or girl in the world, so that person, becomes interested in that. What is happening actually that now we consider it from this point of view that there is a hero and a heroine in, in a novel and a drama. So we think whether the hero is the animus of the heroine, or that The heroine is the enema of the hero. This is like this type of criticism we make up. Generally we do this thing, not common because they are the things of foregone days now. Anyhow, I cannot do much with it. I'm moving to this point. Depth psychology works along similar line by searching texts for collective motives of the human psyche, which are held to be common to different historical periods and languages. These archetypes represent primordial images of the human unconscious, which have retained their structures in various cultures and epochs. Archetypes such as shadow, fire, snake, paradise garden, hell, mother figure, and so on constantly surface in myth and literature as a limited number of basic patterns of psychic images which lend themselves to a structural model of explanation. In line with this approach, one could, for example, interpret Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Cask of Amontillado, with reference to collective archetypes. Poe tells, Poe is, Edgar Allan Poe is an American author and poet. His poem, I Have a Dream Within a Dream, is a lovely one. And apart from that, he has written many inspiring things as well. This story is very complex. I've read it, but it is very complex and really difficult to understand. To collective archetypes, Poe tells the story of a man who is lured into a subterranean. Subterranean means below the earth there are terrains. गली कूचियां हैं बड़े तंग तंग तारीख तारीख. Subterranean wine cellar, cellar शराब खाना जिसमें शराब बनाई जाती है. By a friend under the pretext of wine tasting. Instead, his friend buries him there alive. Having been tricked, he enjoys the wine and foolishly faces death with a laugh. When analyzing these images, it becomes evident that Poe reworked concepts which are deeply rooted in myths. Deeply rooted in myths. Myth and religion. Death as a crypt like underground chamber, wine which dulls the fear of approaching death, and laughter in the face of death. These images surface in the Christian Eucharist too, and in Muslims as well. The person was not like that, so that's why he was not a Muslim. Otherwise, he would have written like we also think of this thing that after this physical death, there is a you know another world, and there are things like implies a stylized consumption of wine to symbolize resurrection. I, I would have loved to talk of this thing, but actually, this is a recording. Thus, turning the grave into a womb from which the deceased is reborn. And probably I have referred to some of such things in the class. As is evident from this example concerning death and resurrection. Resurrection means the restoration of the being in another world. Various cultures, religions, myths, and literature have recourse to mean consider them primordial images are archetypes which like a subconscious language express human fears and hopes. I have made it, I have highlighted it in order to show you that express human fears and hopes. And that's why most of the literature, how we try to modernize it and post-modernize it, but it cannot get rid of the two things. Whether it is treating the theme of human fears or it is treating the theme of human, what we call human hopes that we have a bright future ahead. The aim of archetypal criticism is in line with the methodology of formalist schools, which delve beneath the surface of literary texts in their search for recurrent deep structures, not the apparent structures. And I had talked of it that one is the apparent structure and the other is the deep structure. Now we are moving to the next one. I'm really surprised. Do you want to say something, anyone? I am really surprised that I am not getting any notification from Zoom that your time is out or it is getting out or something like that. So most probably they have honored me that you may continue with your gossip, and you have no problem with it. So the next sub approach in text oriented approach is new criticism. I have already told you this thing, that what was called formalism in Russia and what was called structuralism in United States of America, that very thing was called new criticism in England. So the proponents of they are William K. Ramsett, Ellen Tate, and J.C. Ransom. So they were the three main people. And what was their task? Their task was maintained its status as an orthodox matter for more than three decades. Orthodox means to be stick to the fundamental principles. So the fundamental principles of literature is not to teach politics and other things, but rather to entertain people. And the measures of entertainment, they are a few in number, and one should consider only those aspects rather than indulging into. And this is like now that time is gone, 1930s and 40s. That time is quite far away from us. Nowadays, some people, they have this objection against literature, that why is it so that literature is having its feet spread across many disciplines like psychology, anthropology, politics, sociology, religion, and economics, and legal system, and so many other things, that why it is indulging itself. And this is one of the key concerns of new criticism, that these practices should be avoided. The central features of new criticism, whose name deliberately negates preceding critical methods, name deliberately negates, intentionally reduce preceding critical methods before it, are best understood in contrast to the academic approaches in literary studies which were prevalent in the preceding years. New criticism objects to the evaluative critique, source studies, investigations of socio-historical background, and the history of motives. It also counters author-centered biographical or psychological approaches, as well as the history of perception. Or it rejects all those things. Its main concern is to free literary criticism of extrinsic factors. You would remember this thing, that extrinsic factors are outside of the text, and thereby shift the center of attention to the literary text itself. The most important line comes here, that its main concern is to free literary criticism from extrinsic factors, and thereby shift the center of attention to the literary text itself. New criticism disapproves. New criticism disapproves of what are termed the affective fallacy and the intentional fallacy in traditional analyses of text. Because when we think of affective fallacy or intentional fallacy, definitely author comes, because intentional fallacy, uh, when we talk of affective fallacy, that is related to making mistake because of love, because of some affectionateness for something or some person. An intentional fallacy, that you intentionally make a mistake. Fallacy in both senses mean mistakes. Yes. So, well, wordy, please ask. Anyone? Someone is asking something, I think, or because bored with listening too much, so that's why drawing lines on my screen.
सर जास्ती topic هو عايزين about the elections full words كيف the be some मतलब
وده هم زيادة الفول ووردز की ويل. हाँ.
सर मतलब कि لك topic ختم شيء the ये topic هذا بين last device
Okay, okay. So when we are considering affective fallacy and intentional fallacy, then we are referring back to authors, and they consider that these things shouldn't be considered. So for this reason, uh, this is different. This is different from the previous approaches. This is different. Okay, I'm sorry. ما تلك جواب راكي وستريسات ها كزوس. uh, okay, leave it. I'll continue with it. uh, Sorry for this break. So let's move to beyond this thing. Either I should skip some of the things you may read on your own, and I'm moving to uh, semiotics and deconstruction. And I'm talking in my own words about semiotics, and I hope I have talked of it as well in one of my lectures. That is, semiotic refers to the the process of signification. The process of signification means that as in language we have got this concept of signified and signifier and sign. It means that there is an object, like let's say I say book. Book is an object, the object book, that physical entity. And then I have this word book, book. Now that physical entity that is signified, and this book, this is signifier. And when they mix up in our mind and make a concept, that thing is called sign. So similarly, everything in the world, it has got a semiotic, and there is a discussion about it whether all language is semiotic or not, all language are signs or not, symbols and signs. So in this regard, again I'll be referring to Claude Lewis Strauss and Roman Jakobson, who have worked on this thing. Also Rona Bach, we have worked on this thing, even that why people wear different color of dresses. And a very easy example in today's world is the DP of WhatsApp or Facebook or that Twitter or Instagram or any other social media where the DP is changed, so that DP conveys a specific message. And similarly, the colors of clothes or the types of clothes, the length and width of clothes, and so many of the things are, there are messages in it, and those messages are decoded. So this thing is actually what this is semiotics. This is semiotics. So when we consider literature from these points of view, where instead of looking at the surface meaning of words written, the symbols is apparently they are there, and we go beyond that and we delve into those things. Like if I refer to this very popular thing, so in the if you watch any video clip, and there you find that women are covering their faces with shuttlecock burqas or with this cool tight thing that you have got, Hodune, etc. So your image automatically come to this thought that this is Islamic culture or Pakhtun culture or something like that. Why? Because this is semiotically this specific type of dress is giving a message. And when we are decoding these messages in literary text, this becomes semiotic studies, and at the same time, this becomes deconstruction. Most recent trends in text-oriented literary text theory of the 1970s, 1980s, which regards a text as a system of signs. The basis for these complex theoretical constructs is the linguistic model of Ferdinand de Saussure. The Swiss linguist starts from the assumption that language functions through representation, in which a mental image is verbally manifested or represented. I have already given the example, so I need not explain it again. Before a human being can, for example, use the word tree, he or she has to envision a mental concept of a tree. Now, building on this notion, Saussure distinguishes between two fundamental levels of language by referring to the pre-linguistic concept, in this case, the mental image of a tree. Because before knowing that it is a tree, a kid first sees that tree, the object, and he forms a concept of that thing. And after that he learns uh, this word tree. Now look at this. Uh, Before a baby is able to pronounce the word ami or mummy or whatever, mama or papa or abu or whatever words. Now, in that is pre-linguistic age in which he has developed a concept of both mother and father and other siblings or uncles. And it's in the linguistic stage where he learns that this concept is represented through the word mother, this concept is represented through the word father. So there is a pre-linguistic stage and then there is a linguistic stage. In which before a human being can, for example, yes, building on this notion, start describing fundamental levels of language by referring to the pre-linguistic concept. In the case mental image of a tree is the signified, I already talked of, and its verbal manifestation, the sequence of letters or sounds T-R-E-E, and I talked of it in the form of book. That the physical entity book is one thing, but its representation with B-O-O-K, this word, it's another thing. So the physical entity is what signified, and this representation with the help of B-O-O-K, this is what this is signifier. Mental concept or signified, French signified, you can see that image there. Linguistic realization is that, and then which is called signifier, and in French it is called signifier. Saussure introduces a similar dichotomy classification. Similar dichotomy in his two-level structural explanation of language as means of communication. The conceptual level of Lang provides the necessary abstract rules and methods of combination which are eventually realized by Perrault. In French it is Perrault, in individual spoken or written utterances. So here, because there we talk pre-linguistic stage and then linguistics, pre-linguistic level and linguistic level. So here in linguistics again we have this classification, that one is the competence of any language or of any knowledge in the human mind, and the other is the performance of that thing. If I give you an example, there might be, and surely be, not might be, surely there might be people who will be having uh, mountains of emotions, rather to be otherwise. They may have storms of emotions within them, but they are not, letting others know of the storms of emotions within them. Now, this the presence of the storms of emotions within them, this is actually laying competence. Competence is there. But when it is produced and it is articulated, then it becomes PO or performance. In Introduction to Language Studies, I hope you would have talked of this competence and performance. And if you have not talked of this, so you need to read it on your own. I think I should discontinue because it's taking too much time, and then I won't be able to upload it to WhatsApp. I should discontinue, I think. Okay, 1 minute.